Welcome to Writers Reading, Vanity Fair's original podcast series, featuring authors reading from their own books.
This is Joanna Greenfield, reading from my new book, The Lion's Eye, Seeing in the Wild. The plane landed in a September dawn, just as the sun rose. I leaned backward to look through the one open window. At first, there was nothing but an arc of darker sky in a multitude of small lights, as the sun below blanked out the stars on the horizon. For a long time, the darkness hovered there, then slowly became a lighter arc within the star-studded sky. The gray haze expanded, widened, and stretched. In a line at its base, a sliver of crimson spread. The beginning was undramatic. Rays of light fingered from below the curve of the earth and moved like soft piano music, touching in brief dances across the grasses. Stars above the half-circle paled and winked out. Then, with a crash of light, the crimson spread to fill the arc of gray, and the grasses below it glowed beneath a dark sky. Like colored light from a prism, the rays spread higher, rising and falling, but blanking the stars they touched. Halfway out, the sun no longer arced. It soared across the curve of the earth, then rose in its entirety. The light of the savannah is like nothing else. The sun dwarfed the earth and filled the grasses with a burn of gold. The passenger beside the window stirred and pulled down the shade, but I was glad to sit and catch my breath for a while. I had wanted Africa all my life. I had been wrong about everything in the human world, but I had been right about the savannah. This was my home. The road curled and flattened on the side away from the mountain. It was Switzerland's hills we walked through now, green velvet dotted with white flowers. The sun pulsed on the back of my head. Simon, laughing with Gabriel, turned back. "Memsab, you must walk fast. If you walk slow, you will be tired." I tried, but felt like I was dragging boots of lead, hips stiffening under the belt of the pack. After years of fighting for Africa, I had now only my own body left to struggle against. Simon told me stories and asked about America. I said there were many houses and not much room to walk, and that I liked Africa very much. "In this village they are bad men. So bad," Simon said, as we cut down a switchback past a cluster of huts. "In the forest they like so much to poach and to take gold and to smuggle these things to Zaire." Simon gave Gabriel the bag with Kamumbo's potatoes, took my backpack, and walked fast with it on his head. When the Tanzanians invaded in 1979, they had cut power lines, destroyed plumbing, and burned factories. Because inflation was so high, no other country traded for Ugandan shillings. The ancient trade route, which had carried ivory and slaves and gold and weapons so long ago that the names of the first kingdoms have been forgotten, was closed. The road was too damaged, the border guards and soldiers at the roadblocks too hungry, and Uganda had nothing to trade but bananas and beans that could be bought in any country. In the Kabali market, the women sold only red and blue plastic plates, iron pots, and unsharpened pangas. Refusing to retreat to the barter system, the Bachiga in the triangle of Rwanda, Zaire, and Uganda had turned to smuggling: cattle, gold, stolen goods, humans, and timber. As we descended, the dust turned red and the farms tilted on their slopes, and children clung with curled feet to the grass and ran slanted after us, shouting, "Mzungu." Simon told one story after another of poachers and smugglers and gold miners. In the dark hills at the bottom of the mountain, the road widened and stretched into a village. Simon and Gabriel stopped. Silent and unmoving, a crowd of men blocked our path. The air felt heavy here, as if the dust had sunk down into the valleys. The men wore the same clothes as the top of the mountain people, a jumble of male and female missionary box clothes sold on the black market. Only the spears planted in the red road looked African. Hand-hammered metal glinted through the dust. A few men stood on one leg and leaned on their spears, like the Maasai lion hunters on the savannah. The spears etched trails of shadow in the dust, one black line after another, like the bars of a cage. My feet ached with the throb of broken blisters. When I was walking, they had been an itch and a feeling of something wrong. Standing still, I found that each was outlined as a lack of skin. I was afraid that once I stopped moving, I'd never start again. Facing an ocean of faces, I wondered what to do. I wanted to pass them so badly that I felt as if part of my body had left game guards, blisters, and the crowd behind, and gone striding ahead into the rainforest alone. "You!" Straddling the dust in front of them, an old man pointed the palm of his hand at me. In the village beyond him, A tree twisted its roots into dirt packed like cement. One chair perched lopsided in its narrow shadow. A few square huts, and then off into the distance, running along the red dust road, gardens of banana trees and beans. Another small path wound up the hill and out of sight. The crowd stood so thick that the main road itself had disappeared and spread out from behind them like a peacock's tail of dust. A murmur of threat rippled across the crowd. I looked at Simon and Gabriel for help. Leaning forward, the old man shouted a stream of some language that might have been English, if slower. The men looked away. He grabbed my hand and held it hard, pulling me toward him. I was so startled that he was shaking my hand. It was a while before I realized that he hadn't stabbed me. He smelled like oilcloth and dust. Murmuring, the crowd moved closer. Arms knocked my shoulders, and a hand pushed through them. Not sure what to do, I kept shaking the old man's hand, smiling. He shouted and leaned on my hand and glared. My hips ached with pain. Scowling, he faded to a murmur. I kept shaking, and he loosened his grasp and faltered to a stop. Still smiling, helpless, I let my hand lie in his. He snapped out an order and fell silent, waiting. The flawed of eye are never sure where a blow has come from. It is always safer to stand still or sit. But I had known someone would give me a research site, just as I had known I'd live in Africa someday. A village of men with spears standing between me and the chimpanzees was as ephemeral as dust. There was a long pause. Someone was standing on my foot, and another Bajiga was leaning his full weight on my side, tilting me toward the old man. "It is that this man, he say that you must to give him a job and very much money, Memsab," someone said. I waited for them to tell me what to do, but they looked away. Stumbling in Kiswahili, I told the old man that I had many workers, but that if I needed someone, I would tell him. He dropped my hand and stepped back, smiling. Dredging up Luchiga, I added, because he was old and worthy of respect. Sabo. The crowd melted into a gust of laughter. "Eh, eh, eh!" Arms slapping knees, the men and their spears milled in circles, and patches of red clay appeared beneath their feet. Women and children popped up from nowhere and shouted with the men, like a crowd on market day with a good story to tell. An old woman, almost bald, pushed a gnarled, dusty hand through the crowd and past my face. A pain stabbed the side of my head. I clapped a hand to my scalp, not sure what had happened. She scuttled to the edge of the crowd, then stopped, leaning over her hands. Part of the crowd broke away and followed her, and I could breathe again and move my foot. Arms thrust a baby toward me. "She speaks Luchiga," they said to one another. The baby melted into my arms, then leaned back to look at me. Holding my shoulder with gentle fingers, she leaned back as if to nod to the refrain. "Ah!" she screamed instead, calm and horrified, looking at my face. "Ag!" And the villagers laughed and told one another about that as a man took the baby back, so the two stories wove together, that I spoke Luchiga and that the little one was afraid of the Mzungu. The crowd parted for a man taller by a head than any of the others. He pushed through the last group around me and took my hand. "Mr. Olin said that you would come," he murmured in perfect Oxford English. "He is a good friend from my tribe in the north." The smaller group murmuring around the old woman parted without his asking. "She is pulling the hair she took from you to see if it springs back into a curl when stretched. They have never seen a white person. I am Brother Odell." He led me to a white plaster building on a hill over the mud huts. With his own hands and the help of the village, he had built this monastery. Simon, Gabriel, and Kamumbo disappeared without telling me where they were going or when they were coming back. Books lined Brother Odell's study, the first I had seen since Kampala, besides the ones at the guerrilla research site. A middle-aged man limped in after us and scowled as he squared himself into a chair. I sank down on another, expecting him to throw me out of the forest. Brother Odell sat too, with a more than priestly grace, and introduced me with a smile and a nod, then smiled at the man as well. I'd learned in Kampala that after Museveni had chased Idi Amin to Saudi Arabia and installed his army of orphans as guardians of the peace, he'd selected a government midway between the principles of socialism and communism. Each village elected a representative. These delegates, in turn, chose regional leaders. The representative planted his cane and leaned over it. "So why is it that you are here?" His speech, too, hadn't the faintest trace of Africa. He asked